Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of It's Personal.
The last book I wrote was heavy.
All right. Hey, Gary. This is Edie, the boy.
My name is Randy Rebai.
But my name is GaryRGrayJr.
I don't think I'm a person that curses a lot.
Heart just goes out to educators. I'm excited.
Awesome.
Hi.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of It's Personal. I'm super excited for our guest today. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Joanna Ho, and I am the author of the upcoming picture book, Eyes That Kiss in the Corners.
I'm so excited to talk to you. And you're being very modest because I looked at your profile and your biography, and you have lots of other books coming out as well, which is super exciting. You seem like such just a joy to talk to already. And the books that you're producing seem like they're going to be very valuable to the world. Joanna, can you just share with us just a little bit about who you are and where you're from? I know you said you're based in the Bay Area right now. Can you tell us a little bit about your just history in general?
Sure. I am based in the Bay Area right now. I am paper level, I'm the vice principal at a small public high school. It's a high school that serves, it's a population, it's like a little 2 square mile island within the wealth of Silicon Valley. And the population that we're in, you could get into redlining and racism and systemic issues, but our population is very marginalized. It's a population almost entirely of color, and this area is becoming gentrified pretty quickly. But our school is one that's focused on first generation college students. Most of our students will be that, and they're of color. I have 2 little kids. One is 3, my daughter's 3, and my son is 6. And I am not a native to the Bay Area. I was actually born in Minnesota. I moved to Baltimore when I was in 5th grade, and then I moved to the Bay Area when I was in 6th grade.
Wow. And
then since then, I've sort of been I went to college on the East Coast. I've lived in Ghana. I lived in Taiwan, and then I'm back here. My whole teaching and educational career has been in the Bay Area.
Wow, so much moving.
Yeah, a lot of moving.
So much moving. Wow. And I noticed 2 things in your bio that your younger son loves Lego. So I'm wondering how are your Lego skills? And I'm also wondering about, you said your daughter, I think it was that she loves, I think it's cheese, I think maybe. Is it cheese? Yeah.
So my kids are super weird. So my son is obsessed with trains and planes. What we do on our free time is we go to the train station, and then we stand and we wait for the train, and then we wave at the train when it comes by. My personal Lego skills are abysmal. He's always like, "Mom, let me teach you how to make a plane." And then if I put 2 things together, he's like, "Good job, Mom." And my daughter, she was starting when she was still in a crib and couldn't even walk. She could just pull herself up. She literally would wake up in the morning, and most people's kids, they go, "Mom." My daughter would wake up at the crib and then go, "Cheese, cheese," until I went and got her some cottage cheese, and then she would be.
I love it. I love it. She knows what she wants. I think it's good, right? At a young age.
I know.
Oh, it's so good. Joanna, can you share with us just about your experience growing up in a few of those different places? Because I'm sure they were very different for you as you grow older, especially in the school system. What did that look like for you as a kid, I guess, bouncing around and then also participating in different school systems?
Yeah, I think that, so when I was in Minnesota, I was there until I finished 4th grade. And I was really fortunate. I went to school with my cousins. So I feel like I also went to a gifted and talented magnet school in, the Twin Cities, and whatever that means, because I just remember school was fun and we messed around on the monkey bars. The reason we moved actually is because my parents got divorced. And then, so I moved with my mom to Baltimore, and we moved in with one of her sisters. And I think because I went to a school there, like a school in Minnesota that's gifted and talented. Then I went to a public school in Baltimore. I felt like very far ahead, which I think really increased my confidence as a student. And then I think if we get into, racial dynamics as an Asian person, I think that there was a lot of privilege in some ways for the ways like, people didn't doubt me, or they were always like very supportive. And we were only in Baltimore for a year, and then we moved to the Bay Area to live with another sister of my mom's. My mom is the youngest of 10 kids, so she has a lot of siblings. And here, the school system here, I just feel really privileged to have gone to school here. The irony, I think, a little bit is that I now work across the bridge. So growing up or going to school here, I wasn't as aware of like the fact that students who lived in with the city where I work were bused over to our city because those students didn't have their own public high school. So there's a lot of privilege and there was a lot of ignorance, I think, on my part, which I've been learning about for the last 20 years. And so my experience as a student is very different, I think, than my students' experience, or hopefully the environment we're creating at my school is similar.
Wow.
But systemically different.
And were you always in administration, or did you start I'm assuming you started in the classroom, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I started as an English teacher. So I was an English teacher for quite a few years. Then I became the dean of students at that same school. So I do a lot of restorative justice. I'm always the one who's doing like culture and behavior. I lead a lot of PD on those things, and also on just like equity and anti-racism. And after that, I actually left the school and I joined this like startup. Sounds crazy, but sounds like it's a startup alternative to prison school. So we were trying to reimagine the justice system. So I was designing that program, like what could it look like if we did not incarceration, but if when people broke the law, we had a holistic healing and educational space for them to heal and then return to society. So I worked there for a couple of years. I've been all over. I was like in ed tech for a couple of years doing PD, professional development. And then this is my second year as a vice principal at this school.
Gosh, Joanna, I'm just so impressed with all these things, because on top of that, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, no, honestly, like on top of that, you're a mom. And I think that is, when I hear parents just in general, being an educator myself, talk about the other things that they're involved in and how passionate they are and how much of their heart they give to those things, knowing that their heart is literally always home with their kids, because that's where the most energy is. I'm just so impressed. And we haven't even gotten to the part where like you are writing books. Like, can you tell us a little bit about that journey? How it happened, just like what you're looking forward to. And if possible, can we start with that first book and that amazing title? When I saw it, I like got goosebumps, and I was like, oh, Amazon, pre-order.
Thank you. Yeah, it's actually been quite a journey. I think that when people see it, like I've been so fortunate that the lead up in the last few weeks to the release of my book has been just so well received, and people have been so supportive. But it's been a journey. Like I started writing a few months after my son was born. So literally almost exactly 6 years ago to the day, where I was like looking for Christmas books for him. And I, as an English teacher and someone who's really passionate about inclusion and anti-racism, I was looking for diverse books, Christmas books, and I couldn't find very many. And that sort of started me on this, I had this like big epiphany, like you should write one. And at the time I literally had no idea. I was one of those people who was like, anyone could write a picture book. And then you like get into it and you're like, actually, this is very, very challenging. And I have a lot to learn. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I, pre not knowing any of that, I just was like, okay, I had this epiphany, like you should write books. Which is, not something I really expected before. I wasn't one of those kids who grew up wanting to be a writer my whole life. I've always loved reading. I loved teaching English. And And so since then, I sort of just dedicated myself it was like my little side hustle next to my jobs. And I started doing I joined SCBWI, I started going to conferences, I just started taking classes online so I could fit it around my schedule. And then I would just write in my free time. And the first things I was writing were really horrendous. I'm embarrassed I sent them to even my friends. But I really worked on it for a few years and I started to submit to agents. This sort of relates to Eyes That Kiss in the Corners, but I did a lot of, went to the SCBWI, book of all the agents. And then I went through every single agency and I read about every single agent because I think I write lyrical social justice themed books. And that's not a super hot niche. I think most people at conferences were looking for quirky or funny. And I'm just not funny. I'm quirky, but I don't write those kinds of stories. So there was a very small group of agents who was looking for lyrical or had any passion, I think, for inclusion and diversity. So I narrowed it down and I queried. And I had my dream agent, Karen Wiseman, and I queried her and she requested to see more manuscripts. So I sent her more and then she was like, no, thank you. And I think that experience was really helpful. I feel like all rejection for me actually has been always very motivating. And I think looking back, the stories I had sent her were not that good. And they were stories that I had written because I thought that there needed to be stories like that out, but they weren't necessarily my stories to write. So for example, one was about a boy whose father was incarcerated. And I remember I got feedback once saying, if you haven't been through this experience, you shouldn't write this story. And that was definitely 100% spot on. And so that really pushed me to think about what are the stories of my heart? What are my stories that I need to tell? And that made me sort of reflect and did back and think about as a child, what are some of the things that I felt really deeply? And one of the first ideas that came up was this idea about my eyes, and I think that at the time I didn't recognize that was pain that I was feeling. But if you're looking in the mirror as a kid and doing this to your eyelid and wondering what you would look like with bigger eyes, or wishing, it was such a joke in my family, even Joanna's obsessed with her eyes. My brother has pretty big eyes and long lashes for an Asian person. So there was this jealousy that we would kind of joke about. And it was a thing, and so that's sort of where the starting point of that came from, was from this rejection through digging deep through okay, this is one of the stories. And then I wrote, so that was where that story was sort of born and when I started working on it.
Wow. Wow. That's such an amazing process. And I think it's important for not just adults to hear, but kids to hear as well. To listen to how you got to the heart of certain stories, or your voice within stories, because of course, we say it and when we hear it, we're yeah, of course we can write stories that are about us way better than any other story. But right. Until we actually hear it or get the feedback from it and get into those stories, we just forget sometimes. So I'm just super curious of what that looks like on a page for you, because then your second title is Playing at the Border. So all of these titles, and I'm thinking to myself, holy cow, these books would work so well in my classroom just based on the title. And then now I'm speaking to you and I'm knowing even more that these books are going to be so great for kids in my classroom. I can't even imagine how many kids and families, just people in general, are going to benefit from your work already. So I'm super excited for you. Really excited. Yeah. So you found an agent, obviously.
Yeah. So actually, my agent is Karen. So the dream agent. So I wrote this. The one I resubmitted, when I resubmitted to her, it's kind of a funky story, but I, at the time, was for SCBWI, was leading like a conversation around own voices at our local SCBWI conference, and Karen was coming to that conference. I didn't realize that she was local at the time, so I like had a manuscript critique with her, and that was a different manuscript about Ai Weiwei, who it was a nonfiction story. He's a super activist artist from China, and so after she did that, read that one, I didn't know how to be like, by the way, I already submitted to you, but I don't remember how I like slipped that in there, but I think she remembered. And she asked to see this manuscript again after I revised. And so after I revised it, I like knew I was about to have a baby, like literally. And I submitted to her knowing the baby was coming like any day. And then it came, my daughter came like a few days after I submitted. And then a few weeks later, when my daughter was a few weeks old, she responded and asked for just to chat on the phone. And so that sort of went from there. So I did end up signing with her.
That is such an amazing story. And talk about resilience, because like you had every opportunity within there to say, you know what, I'm just going to step back and not do this anymore, or not even not just do it, but like take a break or whatever the case may be. Like you're also having a baby. So like, I can't even imagine like how you're feeling during that time, the pressure, the anxiety, the stress, like all those things. And on top of that, you're like, I'm just going to still send this in. I'm still going to see what happens. I still have hope. Like that is some resilience, which is amazing. Amazing. That's so cool. That's so cool. And then on top of that, I'm going to just get right into it because again, I'm very curious. So you're also writing a novel as well.
Yeah. I think that for me, writing is really an extension of just like, I think the umbrella passion here is around equity and anti-racism. So my work in education is very much tied to like why I became a writer and why I feel it's not like a side gig. I mean, it is kind of, but I think the reason that the drive is so strong is because it feels like this is an opportunity to have a voice and to tell stories. To like do some work, to make some change maybe. And if this is one way that I'm able to do that, then I feel so fortunate. And so it's not just like, oh, I really want to be published. It's definitely that, but it also feels like there's deeper meaning in the work. So I think that's what helps when I'm tired and I'm doing all the things. Like, it's not just like, oh, I can give that up. It feels like, no, that's actually really important. So the novel is, I never thought I would write a novel, but it was born from multiple experiences I had in the Bay Area where I knew I wanted to write something that was about anti-Asian racism. And I read, actually I didn't know it at the time, but I read The Hate U Give. And I remember thinking, I would love to write a novel that speaks like the way this spoke to me. And there's no way I'm ever going to be an Angie Thomas, but that was the inspiration. And so then from there, that was like, okay, I want to write something about anti-Asian racism. And there were like multiple experiences I had where, so for example, once I was at a dinner party, I was the only Asian person there. And it was a group of really privileged people that I, didn't actually know very well. And they started a few years ago, in my community, there were 2 epidemics of teenage suicide. And they got onto that topic. And then someone said, well, it's all the Asian people who've moved into this community and they increase the pressure on our kids and they can't handle it. And I remember I was like at the dinner party and I was just like, but I should say something. And then I just couldn't. Wow. And then another time, not too far after that, I was in a Lyft and my driver made basically exactly the same comment. Oh, it's all the Asian people. And I was like, do you not see this face? Like, hello. Wow. And so that's really where the inspiration for the novel came from. Like, it's based on the story of a girl whose brother dies by suicide. And the community turns against her family, and she's Chinese, and basically blames her family for his suicide. And so it kind of is about her dealing with grief, but also finding her voice in the process.
Wow, you are. I'm super excited for you. I'm sold. I'm so sold on you as a writer. The books that you are going to produce to the world. I'm so excited. I really, really am. And what's the, I guess, what's the year for that book? Like when will we hopefully see that
I
book
think
in the
it's
world?
2023.
2023.
Yeah.
Okay, that's so exciting. That's so exciting. Joanna, I have just a few more questions for you. I have more, but we'll have to talk again. Just based
Okay,
on
would love
timing.
to.
But I guess I'm wondering, what are you doing right now for Joy? I know that you have 2 kids. You're also an administrator, and it sounds like you're being pulled in lots of different directions. So, what are you gonna do for the break? You have a break coming up. What are you going to be doing for the break, maybe?
I'm going to eat all the cookies, bake all the cookies, and then eat them. I am just excited to write. Honestly, I haven't had a time to write. So I'm excited to be home with the kids and just be able to like focus and hopefully get some sleep. This is like not very lofty plans, but sleep, writing, and a lot of cookies and time with my kids sounds really wonderful.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's what it is, right? A lot of times people forget, like, those are the things out as educators, because you're always constantly working and thinking, checking emails, tending to kids and teachers, etc. When you get quiet time or you get time to yourself, like sometimes you just don't want to do anything. You want to just put your feet up. You just want to watch a movie or read a book. Like, those are the moments that really get us really excited. So I totally understand exactly how you're feeling and why you're doing those things.
Like, what are you doing on your break?
That's like literally it. Like, we're like, both me and my wife, we've talked, like, what are we gonna do? And it was like, we're gonna read books, we're gonna go for walks if we can, we're gonna like maybe watch a movie on Netflix. Like, it's nothing out of the ordinary at all, besides like trying to turn off as much as possible.
Totally. I think one thing about the pandemic is, like, because everything's blended and overlapping, like, I feel like my brain is constantly being split, you know? It's like what you're saying, like, work never ends, and then my kids aren't always there, and then trying to figure out writing, and I'm excited to just like have my brain be able to be in one place.
Totally.
For like an extended period of time.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's one of those things where, like, we try to cherish it as much as possible, because like it goes by I hope it doesn't, but it goes by so fast that all of a sudden you're back in the classroom again.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
The next semester starts, right?
Yeah.
So again, I'm super happy that you were able to come on with me today. Where can people find you online?
Sure. I'm the most active on Instagram. I'm occasionally on Twitter, but my handle on both of those places is Joanna Ho Writes. So that's pretty easy. And my website is the same, joannahowrites.com.
Awesome. And again, just for the people that are listening, can you list you can list them. I would actually love for you to list them all. Which books are coming out in possibly the year that we could possibly see them as well.
Okay, so my debut picture book will be released on January 5th, 2021. So in a few weeks. And that one is called Eyes That Kiss in the Corners. It's about a young girl who wishes for bigger eyes and realizes through family relationships that her eyes are beautiful and that she's powerful. The second is called Playing at the Border, a story of Yo-Yo Ma, that will release in the fall of next year. It's also a picture book. It's the story of Yo-Yo Ma, who he played at the border between Texas and Mexico in 2019. So it's the story, sort of his story, but also the story of the music and the cello and the composer, and how it's about crossing borders and bridging borders and not building walls. My novel is called The Silence That Binds Us, and that will be released, I think, in 2023. And then I have one more picture book being released. It's called One Day, That's in 2024. And that is really like a mother's ode. I wrote it for my son when he was a newborn. It's
Wow.
definitely really different now than it was then. Back then it had like a stanza about like how one day his toe was going to have hair growing out of it. And that's not in there anymore. But it has sort of I would say anti-toxic masculinity bent, so more positive masculinity message in that story.
Joanna, thank you so much for hanging out today. I must say it was just such a treat talking to you. I'm super excited to watch. Yeah, I'm super excited to watch your journey, and just super excited for everyone to see the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And it's coming out soon, so hopefully everyone goes out and gets your books.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure to be on here. It was a great way to start my day.
No, this is super awesome.